Hey YouTube, this is Dan. Today I'm making a video about hyperreligiosity. I know I made a video about this in the past that was very similar. However, this time, instead of focusing on the tangible occurrences during these periods of hyperreligiosity, I'd prefer to speak about what goes on inside. The kind of sorry, the kind of inner turmoil you have while it's happening in the context of, self-awareness and insight, as well as talk about how it's seen in hindsight, as you're looking back at, whatever the hyper-religious activity caused you to do. So that brings me to defining it. So hyper-religiosity is a fixation on spiritual beliefs to the point of a lower quality of life. So it's differing from your baseline level of spirituality. Now, this symptom is found in uh, many diagnoses such as bipolar, schizophrenia, OCD, and even temporal lobe epilepsy. Now, prior episodes, people with these conditions, regardless of their spiritual inclinations or beliefs, anyone's liable to suddenly experience this. Um, I know, from reading anecdotes of, people that are, say, atheists or agnostics who suddenly felt this, uh, had a very radical change, during in the midst of an episode. In which case, I'm gonna go link this study in the description that I found that really describes this. How you know people during episodes may gravitate towards spirituality as a means of coping. However, at the same time, there's the question that's very controversial, of course, of how much of it is the result, just quote unquote a symptom. Um, and the study talks about particularly how mixed states, with the combination of mania and depression, how those are extremely likely to cause this kind of seeking for spirituality. But that debate of whether is it consciously seeking help through suffering, or is it a symptom that naturally leads you to believing in that, um, which the study admits. I'll read the excerpt. It says, unfortunately, our study could not determine whether the higher rates of prayer/meditation for participants with bipolar disorder who are in a mixed state indicate that prayer/meditation is a helpful means of coping, or the behavioral consequence of underlying psychopathology, such as religious delusions. We do not believe that our findings were a consequence of religious delusions or hallucinations in our sample, since the parent study excluded individuals who were acutely manic and/or psychotic, and we found that higher ratings of the influence of religious beliefs on life were not significantly associated with bipolar disorder participants who are in mixed states. Now, it's very big how they mentioned that it doesn't include people that are acutely manic or acutely psychotic or both, because that can introduce the risk of psychosis with a religious theme, which is very common. And of course, it's much easier to be hyper religious when um, when you're experiencing psychosis with these religious themes that seem to be directed towards you specifically. So that's something to keep in mind as well with this study. And that, just shows how much insight is such an important factor, uh, to end this debate of, well, I guess not debate, it could be a mixture of both, but as far as the extent of how much of it is, reaching out for help consciously, or a reaction of the brain causing you to gravitate towards it. There's actually another study I found looking at this video later on that I want to add in, and it's talking about it's from the perspective of both the clients as one group and then the mental health professionals from another, uh, in regards to their view of spirituality and the role of mental illness. In this case, the clients have schizophrenia, so it's about the role it plays in that. Now, the overarching viewpoint is that spirituality, including religion, can really help form an anchor, like to ground clients and help them cope better. Uh, but however, it's interesting. The study does note some potential downsides when it's comes to the hyper religious part, and that includes things such as med noncompliance due to a belief in being healed um, through supernatural means. Uh, you know, it, being a not a catalyst, but I guess I guess kind of it being like the level of devotion, uh, and its role in playing with religious themed delusions, uh, as as well as but another positive though is that it could be seen as as another support system, in the same way from like interpersonal support systems. However, in this case, not only from clergy, but it could also be from the belief in the higher power that is always with them and always loves them. It's certainly helped me a lot in my recovery. Um, Now, the other thing I want to discuss too is the idea of, um, if if it, in general, and in the vast majority of cases, it helps. Shouldn't it be more, it seems encouraging than to seek it out, right? Seek anything that helps. However, I think and I've seen other, similar views on the topic. When I was felt the same way I was looking around the internet, was that for people that really want to sink their teeth in it and learn more about whatever spiritual belief they have or religious tradition they're part of, merely seeking it out to help you out from a consequentialist point of view, right? It's not gonna last because you're kind of going into it thinking, I don't care if it's real or not. I want it to help me. Whereas if you're seeking knowledge, you're seeking, just knowing more about the world and your existence. Uh, Once you leave it as, well, I only pursued it to help me, and that's my primary focus. Like, it supersedes all other devotions. Um, well, it's not gonna be very long lasting. So I believe that, and but on the other hand, seeking out more information can cause obsessions as far as reading religious scriptures, church, well, for my case, like church authority documents, uh, just theological dogmatic material. So that kind of stuff too is something to take into consideration. After the episode comes the hindsight, and this affects both believers and non-believers. People who are not religious or spiritual might find themselves shocked at their behaviors and embarrassed, just confused, really, because that's not how they present themselves. Well, at least their worldview. That's not what they think, and how radical everything changed can be very shocking from someone who is religious. Uh, Such as myself, I might find myself scared about how I may proceed. I know for sure I did. I mean, like I did. I was very scared because I found myself questioning my beliefs on account of its relation to my mental state, how malleable my beliefs were just based on off whether my meds are working or not, how much I want to love my God, whether based on whether is my debit code working. I mean, or not. I guess if it doesn't work, I find myself even more interested. Uh, and and in the same light of people that are not religious, it can be embarrassing for them as well due to, again, it's the extent. Um, Not to say that moderation is necessarily the route. I'm just saying that because at least for my beliefs, um, dedication is important. But when it's going in the wrong places and it's being very intrusive, I think it's important that yes. So, with intrusiveness, as far as what you talk about, your openness with it, I'll use myself as an example. I grew up Catholic. Uh, well, I remember found myself praying the rosary like in the floor, in like public places. I would, like school, for example, of all places. I would go to confession multiple times a week. I email the priest about concerns all the time. Reading papal documents, yeah, like, and all night and not sleeping, trying to, learn theology. It just comes to a point that, uh, and again, not a bashing practices. It was just the extent to which I did them and how maybe inappropriate. You could say they were in the setting I was doing it that in doing them in, or the frequency with which I was doing it. It's just simply a problem, you know, like, objectively. Um, now, I think the next aspect is, you know, how to proceed from it. You know, it's just how do you, when you look at all this behind you, how do you move forward in your faith? Or if you don't have faith, how do you move forward from removing the the memories away? And that's something I'm still working on. I mean, for me, and this is my opinion, you know, of course, I'm no Dr. Dan, but for me, I think waiting for symptoms to be in either full or near remission, uh, you know, once you're stable, then you can dedicate the time to explore your beliefs in a more rational mindset. You know, because baseline may not be the same for everybody. Like looking back from how we used to think about about spiritual matters to how we look about it now post all these, you know, symptoms, it's not going to be the same because all our experiences have formed the way we are, forms our worldview, forms our character. Everything changes naturally, like even without mental illness. Of course, though, it's just my advice. You know, take it for what you will. Um, uh, Mental health or theology, if that matters. So that's just the way I see it. Please let me know what you think in the comments. As for me, my experience, despite all the, you know, scary shit I've seen and not, you know, experienced, I suppose, from my delusions, that religious theme, as well as um, the way it dominated my life in an obsessive way. Um, Despite all of that, though, I see them as subjective experiences that I don't want to blind me from a truth that may or may not be there. Uh, so I'm still searching. Um, you know, I'm just trying to get more integrated into that and learn more if I can. Um, Now that, you know, I'm been doing better. So that's just, again, my recommendation. And you know, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Any ideas for future content. Um, you know, appreciate all the love, guys. Thank you.